It feels like just knowing ourselves is not quite enough, and that we need to keep working on our personal evolution through our multiple lives and immortality. To explore this idea, let's welcome our next speaker, Marcia Trajano, for her talk entitled Making Sense of Reincarnation. Marcia Trajano is a member of the Board of Directors of the Christian Spiritist community of Atlanta, Georgia, that she co-founded in 1997. For the past 2 decades, she has been engaged in different areas, including youth education and delivering classes on inner transformation, fraternal assistance, and mediumistic activities. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. I can see you, but I don't know if you can see me behind the podium. Oh. Can somebody help me with the... Sorry. I just have 3 slides. The next slide, can somebody help me? There you go. No, that's the last one. No, this is the first one. Sorry, I'm here now. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Very, very happy to be here. And I just want to say thank you, Julio, for introducing this today's activities. And I'm here today to ask you, shall we talk a little bit about death? Right? My goal is for the next few minutes for us to understand death a little bit better, and as a result, for us to be better prepared to handle this topic that is so difficult for so many of us. On a personal note, last year, 2018, was a very difficult year for me. My mother spent over 2 months in the ICU, and in that drama that preceded her disincarnation, her departure from us in the physical realm, all of those, including myself, who were involved, were somehow forced to confront the very idea of death and dying. From many different backgrounds and belief systems, there are some Buddhists, Catholics, atheists, Spiritists, you name it. Collectively, we were all confronted by unanswered questions about death, and at the same time consumed by the fear of dying and by the panic of losing someone so, so dear to us. But this drama is not unfamiliar to most of us here. Yet, it is part of the great mystery called living. Francis Bacon, the 17th century British philosopher, said, "Men fear death as children fear to go in the dark. And as the natural fear in children is increased by tales, so is the other." And there we are. 4 centuries later, our society still struggles with this notion. And generally, our society deals in this topic with a very sanitized fashion. Yet for us to overcome this inherent fear, it is so important for us to talk about death and to examine it very closely. Thank you. Sorry for that. One aspect that we recognize in our material lives is this body. This incarnation was loaned to us for a very specific amount of time. Soon enough, it will be time for me, for us to leave. We all have an expiration date. Maybe a few years, maybe a few minutes. Each of us have a different expiration date, but let's pretend that our expiration date for all of us here was May 4th, 2019 at around 9:50. Oops. We could ask ourselves, are we ready to die? Did we kiss our loved ones before we came here? Did we tell them how much we love them? Did we forgive those who messed up? Did we ask forgiveness for those who we messed up? We hurt them? Are all of our affairs in order? Death is messy, right? We know we should be ready, but no one ever is. The famous Brazilian medium, Chico Xavier, suggests that we live as if we knew we were going to die, so that one day we could die as if we knew how to live. So proceeding from that, we come to terms with this sense of, do we really know the process of dying? We all assume, in fact, that dying is a bad thing. Who told us that dying is a bad thing? We have died so many times before this time. We, all of us here, should be able to internalize the idea of removal of a stigma and even the sense of something catastrophic or even tragic about dying. But to do so, we need to die well, which requires living well. Most of us are conditioned to worry about our material existence, right? Things like having enough money to have a comfortable life, but somehow we forget to worry about gaining enough knowledge so that we also have a comfortable death. The problem about our death is a problem of attachment, sometimes also about guilt. But we should reflect a little bit about it, right? And we realized how attached we are to here and now. We should ask, if we have guilt, what have we done? Have we hurt ourselves? Have we hurt others? Another question is when we face the death of others, which is also a question of attachment. Oh, we feel sad. We feel surprised. We feel absence. Who ever said losing a loved one was easy? Dying too soon is another question, but then who told us that dying at 12, 35, 82 was too soon? My mother was 90. How long are we going to live is not in the span of our control, but to live well is. And that simply means controlling our imperfections, living well with one another, serving. The reverse of that is not dying well, which just may means dying without accomplishing anything, or in some cases, living what I call a placebo life. There are so many questions about what happens after we die. Where do we go? Is there heaven and hell? Well, according to Spiritism, life after death has a substantial meaning. Thank you, Julio, again. And depending on the state of our consciousness, we will go to a very enlightened space or not so, quite dark ones. How? When do we end this, endless cycle of birth and rebirth? When we reach the state of pure spirits. Do we ever achieve meaning as a human being? And the answer to that is that our spiritual life will be fully manifested when we achieve perfection. But then what is perfection? When we reach that state of simplicity and intelligence. So the trajectory toward perfection is when we can indeed eradicate pride and selfishness in us. Not an easy feat, because it is so rooted in who we are today. Knowing that we are immortal souls, we can also ask, if we are immortal, why do we have to reincarnate? And if reincarnation is a chance to grow, to improve, to learn, why can't we do that elsewhere? This corporal life is the great life. It is where we have a chance to learn, and learning in flesh, I call it, is to confirm our learning, not in the flesh. A good way for me to understand that the need to be here now is simply if I imagine somebody who goes to medical school and spends X number of years studying, reading, it's all theoretical. And before that learning is truly absorbed, understood, integrated, internalized, that person has to go through years of practice. It's practical, it's residency. And that is how I understand, that's how I can understand that those two needs for learning. So if we agree that we have a life and that we need to come back to learn, then my next question is, well, how many deaths, how many lives? And as I said before, as many as necessary, right? So while we know that we have an expiration date in this life, we don't have an expiration date on the timeline of our immortal soul's trajectory. Are we the body we see in the mirror? It's good to see the answer to that comes both from Pope Francis as well as Chico Xavier again, because they tell us we are here to become better. We're here in this journey of inner transformation. We are here to transform ourselves in pure spirits. And when we die on earth, we are reborn in the spiritual realm. When we're born on earth, we die, figuratively speaking, in the spiritual realm, and that is a temporary phase. And again, we do that with the purpose to broaden our experience, to learn with different perspectives. Today, I'm a woman. Tomorrow, I may not be a woman. And what about our ego? Oh, goodness, that is such a source of troubles. During our material experience, many of us end up thinking that the ego, that the body, is our real identity. When we do so, we start to think of ourselves in terms of illusory identification, body type, gender, race, nationality, religion, profession, etc., etc. We do know, however, that our identity is found in our soul, our spirit. So for the sake of argument, let's reverse this question here. If we are not a spirit, live in a material body, would there be a point in identifying with this biological construct, this collection of cells? This is subject to disease. This is subject to aging, to dying. It has a beginning, a birth, and frequently unpredicted end, its death. It has so many fragile components. Without the spirit, what is this? A lump of lifeless chemicals, and for those Star Trek fans, an ugly bag of water. So life after death is actually understood as reincarnation. Re, again, in, enter into, carna from Latin, flesh. body, reincarnation. Reincarnation is a religious or philosophical concept that the spirit, after one's biological death, begins a new life in a new body. So we often joke when we hear and understand and adopt and accept reincarnation as part of our trajectory. And we often think, oh, yes, we were kings, we're pharaohs, we're maharajas, shamans, emperors. Secretly, we all wish it was true. But the discussion about this topic of reincarnation is one of the tenets of Spiritism, as was mentioned before. It is also beyond being one tenet of Spiritism, it's a major subject and topic of research. And many non-Spiritist books have been written about this subject. So as a Spiritist, I'm so excited to actually understand that there are more people who believe in reincarnation than there are not. There's so many books written exploring the topic in the search of its proof. Some of the ones that are mostly familiar are Dr. Ian Stevenson, psychiatrist and author of many books. Dr. Brian Weiss, his one of the books that is amazing for most of us is Many Lives, Many Masters. Tom Schroeder, Michael Newton, Helen Opic, and so on and so on. So if we think in terms, Spiritism talk about reincarnation, non-Spiritist research talk about reincarnation, but beyond those two communities, there are actually many, many famous people that are talking about it. They believe in reincarnation, and they have documented, they stated something about it. So who are they, just so that we can frame ourselves? Socrates, 3rd century BC, was already talking about reincarnation. Pythagoras, Plato, Rumi, a favorite poet from the 13th century, Gauguin, French painter, and he goes on and on. Mahatma Gandhi, Walt Whitman, Benjamin Franklin from the U.S., Mark Twain, Churchill, etc., etc. One that I would like to bring about is actually a certain Giordano Bruno. In the 1600s, he was tortured and burned by the Inquisition, and this Dominican priest and philosopher was put to death because he preached about life after death. Oh, goodness. Aren't we lucky? We are not Giordano Bruno. We're talking about this very topic in a microphone. But does reincarnation make sense? From a purely material perspective, as mentioned, scientists globally research the topic with the one focus, which is the understanding this phenomenon of life after death. And besides all of the proofs, all the books, everything that we have documented, there's still people that do not believe in reincarnation. Maybe they're guided by the idea of not only believing that they cannot understand what they cannot see, they cannot touch or smell, but then we know that's not reality, right? Are we equipped to really only absorb what we can see, smell, touch? What about microorganisms? What about seeing the dark? What about distant galaxies? What about hearing below a certain frequency, so on and so forth? What we perceive in reality is such a small part of a much larger reality. Maybe like the tip of an iceberg, where the larger part of an iceberg is underwater. The larger part of our spiritual existence cannot be perceived by our material senses. So we are so blessed with God's incredible mercy. God gives us the gift of life after life. God gives us the possibility of not enter eternal suffering. Instead, God, we find and we accept, is the one of a loving Father that provides us with so many opportunities. Opportunities to learn, opportunities to fail, opportunities to try again, opportunities to improve. So in summary, for a little bit over 150 years, we have learned through the teachings given to us through Kardec and Spiritism that we are spirits. We've been created simple and ignorant, neither good or bad, just naive. Through our lives, we become more and more able to be the co-creators of our own progress, our own evolution. Incarnation after incarnation, we grow, we evolve, we become better, we become less imperfect. Spiritism is this platform that helps us understand additional questions, such as, why am I suffering? Why are there people that are so difficult to deal? At home, at work? Why is my family life so hard? Why is it difficult for me to relate with some and so easy with the others? When we allow ourselves to ask such questions and take time to reflect upon them, we naturally gravitate toward that idea of becoming better at everything. The journey toward this inner transformation is the greatest advantage, the greatest benefit of living. And it's a constant invitation to us that Spiritism gives. Spiritism provides that evidence, that explanation about death, disincarnation, explanation about birth, incarnation, and the cycle, reincarnation. It helps me, it helps us make sense of reincarnation. And once we become aware of our very existence of immortal souls, our lives automatically begins to change. Allan Kardec declares the spirit should not fear death because life ceases to be a hypothesis to become a reality. And with this knowledge, we also find that we have eternity to reach our spiritual destiny. I am so very thankful for Spiritism. I am so very thankful for the opportunity to learn. And the body of knowledge that is the foundation of this discussion is also the foundation of all the topics throughout the day today. Thank you so much for being here. And I just wanted to say that there are many, many resources out there to learn more about the core tenets of Spiritism, which includes death and reincarnation. There are so many gems in the spiritual literature about the subject, but one in particular was very helpful to me during my time of grieving for my mom earlier this year. I don't believe this book is in English yet, but I would recommend, if you're ever in a situation like me where you had to breach people from many different philosophies and belief systems, this little book, easy to read, by Alexandre Caldini, he wrote in the form of a conversation. And that conversation was actually with a 14-year-old daughter of his friend who had gone through this abrupt death of her own mother. And so that's one that I would say, try to see if you need it, I would recommend that. But there are many others that deal with this topic that are very dear to me. Herculano Pires, Leon Denis, who's my very favorite author, in his book Here and Hereafter, or Death, who maybe even be here today, very easy to read and talk to us learning to speak about it, learning to examine, learn to not look at death again as a sanitized topic, right? We don't need to hide what happens to us. We need to look at it in a very natural way. Of course, Allan Kardec. Spirit's book, chapter 2, I believe from questions 140 to 165, it's very interesting because Allan Kardec asks questions and he keeps pushing the questions. So what happens? Is it abrupt? Do I fly away? There's one of the questions, 155, where he says, do we just flip the switch, right? We're alive and then we're dead. What happens? And in a very poetic way, the spirits answer that it's not like a bird that is in a cage and just flies away. That death is very gradual. And as such, there are many implications of that process that is good for us to hear. So I just say to you, go, read, talk to your children. Bring the subject not as something so foreign to us that is so difficult to happen, to face, to discuss, and nearly destroy so many of us. It nearly destroyed me. With 2 decades of reading about Spiritism, I could not almost survive the pain of death. So with that, I say thank you and good journey for all of us. Thank you.